Welcome back, everybody. If you are joining the House Senate Conference Committee on S.127, the Omnibus Housing Bill, and today is still 29th. Right. And on our agenda, Madam Chair.
Essence. Oh, we didn't gave essence. Thank you.
On our agenda are several things, actually. One is whatever you want to tell us about your latest offer back to us.
Right.
The second is I do have, and everyone has joined us, I do have a draft of a housing appeals.
Sorry, we're just trying to all get on the same page.
No, would you like us to wait a minute?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, maybe what we should do is ask Kristen to print it because John can't be here
Oh,
and you don't have the newest one printed,
Right,
but
I
it's
don't,
up to you.
I hadn't even,
Would you like a 5-minute recess?
we have a list from John Gray, which is what we're trying to all get on the same page with.
just what your changes.
Yes.
Great.
And is that what you're wanting here?
Mhm.
It is helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with his chip proposal.
Okay.
So do you want to forward that to Kristen?
They're working on posting it and printing it now.
Oh, great.
I
Okay.
can do it.
Okay.
And I'll let you
So
know.
John has sent it to,
My supervisor, Megan, and
Okay.
she's having it posted.
great, terrific. We can either wait to see it or we can start talking through it.
Whichever you'd like, or we can talk briefly about appeals, or should we do that at the end?
We can talk about appeals.
Whichever you prefer.
We can talk about appeals. All right. I mean, I think that we can.
And I'm going to be brief. Ellen is here if there are questions, but I think you will recognize this. Essentially, what we've done is if you turn to page 2, you'll recognize paragraph 1. And everything else is just conforming.
Right.
And what it's doing is it's basically saying that people who are appealing municipal decisions have to be either a person aggrieved, they have to be a person aggrieved, and they have to own property in the immediate neighborhood. And everything else is conforming. There was one change at the very last page. You can see we added 3 because 3 was, remember that section on interested person that, I'll tell you what, Ellen, you just want to explain that one change.
LTF, the Office of Legislative Counsel. So this was the language that Senate Economic Development had looked at. Number 3 under the interested person definition is the person owning or occupying property in the immediate neighborhood. And so with this change on the last page, it is saying that number 3, the immediate neighborhood or the any 20 persons are now excluded from the definition of interested person, so they therefore cannot appeal. But because you have added to the definition of aggrieved person, the immediate neighborhood, it sort of covers what was aggrieved.
In other words, we didn't want 2 different language of the same thing. And 3 was sort of in the immediate neighborhood. We liked your language in the bill, which is on page 2. And so there are, I have to say, we have some concerns about possibility of the success of a challenge to this. If someone can demonstrate they are aggrieved and not in the immediate neighborhood, but this is what we're proposing.
So we appreciate your proposal. We appreciate you having looked at our language from the Senate Economic Development. We worked hard on it. There were constitutional issues raised at the very end. It then went to Senate Natural Resources and Energy. And in SNRE, they heard testimony very strongly supporting the constitutional concerns that were, and they really feel very strongly and have convinced the rest of the Senate to support LURB actions. If we want to do this work, seeing what LURB is will be reporting to us and recommending to us in the fall, that then we would add this if we felt this was important, if the municipal appeals hadn't been taken up. But that our SNRE right now is firmly dug in, and the Senate is now pretty strongly supportive of just starting with LURB and seeing what LURB recommends in November, and then adding this if we need it, depending on what happens, with what they recommend.
So at this point, then I'd say we aren't in agreement on this. We may reach agreement.
Right.
We're not. Okay.
But that position was then, that support grew over the course.
Now, in terms of, that's where we're at. Okay.
Did we talk about the constitutional question?
The Constitution, we know the Constitution.
We know it's a
Do we all know them?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we all have agreed that there may be constitutional issues with this, and I think that, and I've stated the Senate's position.
Second question is the question of universal design. I'm only going to take this up now if Elizabeth, are you in the room?
I'm right here.
She's right by.
Have you had any conversations?
I have.
Okay. We are prepared to talk about that now. If you would like, we can wait until after your presentation.
I think that there have been a number of conversations that have gone on about universal design with Elizabeth, with Acacia, Mike, and
Just talk to Mike.
yeah, right. So
Yeah, I think Elizabeth, why don't
you want
you
to
identify yourself?
Can I sit up?
Yeah, you can sit up.
And I get a witness.
State your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Representative Elizabeth Burrows. I represent Windsor One, which is Heartland, West Windsor, and Windsor. I'm here to talk about the Universal Design Study. Oops, sorry. So I just got off the phone with Mike DeRocha. Rocher. And so there are a couple of things to just be clear about. I also got the list of the Vermont Access Board members, and that actually confirms to me that the study committee is a more appropriate venue for this, because the Vermont Access Board, it seems to me, looking at the membership, is really composed of Corrections and Institutions Committee members and BGS members, and then the Vermont Center for Independent Law, which is now totally defunct and their office is closed. So they're
Not defunct, I mean, that, I don't think we've heard that Vermont Center for Independent Living is defunct. At this
their office is emptied out and
There's no
whatnot.
one there.
There's no one there.
In dire straits.
If that's what we were relying on for people with lived experience, I feel comfortable asserting that we can no longer rely on that as people with lived experience. And my, top layer, these decisions should be made, including people who are going to have to live with the decision as their residences. We're not even talking about BGS and public accommodations. We're talking about where people are going to live. Secondly, just to reiterate the statistic that I keep throwing around, but we have our current housing stock for accessibility is 0.04% of our residential housing stock available is accessible. And at the same time, our homeless population is more than 80% has a physical disability. So forgetting the fact that we live in an aging state. So how are we going to, in any way, address that paradox? The purpose, there are a couple of purposes of the study committee. They are not so that a study could, or a task force, they're not so that it could just happen and then go out into the ether. It's actually backwards designing definitions for programs that we set into motion last biennium, including a grant from VHIP, which would create accessibility. When at the housing conference in October, November, whenever it was, I asked Sean Gilpin what the uptake was for that program. And he said 0, because we had not defined what we meant by that when visitability and or versus accessibility versus universal design. And so that's the first purpose. But the second purpose is, and I think also important, is that every time accessibility, visibility, universal design gets brought up, there are some developers, including legislators, who come and say, this is far too expensive. What are they talking about what do they think they're talking about when they say it's too expensive? I'm not sure that they know exactly what they're talking about when they say it's too expensive. And so part of the reason to have all of the membership of this task force is to, just like with the little kids, not that they're little kids, but to bring everybody in and have them be part of the actual decision-making process so that they can see firsthand that it is not a cost center. It is actually a benefit add for when you're doing design, when you're contemplating these features, defining whatever the features specifically are. The next purpose is, I'm pointing to Chad because VHF, what's that?
Conveniently located.
It's right here. But we, Chad Simmons and Mara and I last biennium had talked about codifying what VHFA already requires, and there are some other agencies that already require it, but they mirror the HUD requirements using HUD funding. And my concern was that it's a practice, but it's not codified. And so the secondary original purpose was to codify what they already do. Now that we're in this new regime, we don't know where HUD requirements are going to go. So we want to make sure, one of the purposes ultimately is to make sure that at the very least, the HUD requirements are codified in our state law so that they remain. My personal goal is not to have it be at this moment, have it be a full-on building code requirement, but to actually have it be a requirement only for new residences that are built using state funding, regardless of how that funding is rated, since we no longer are entirely sure. We could at least be sure that using state funding, universal design was part of the process.
Can we pause here?
Yeah.
I think it's really important that we take seriously our responsibility to not make people think an organization might not exist anymore that they rely on. So I have a social media post from Vermont Center for Independent Living on April 2nd saying, we have put our building on the market. It's in the heart of Montpelier. Check out the listing. And then they later say, it was wonderful being where we were. We found an accessible rental and hopefully we'll be ready to announce in the next few weeks. We're hoping to move to another location soon. We decided months ago to sell the building and are reposting the listing. We'll be renting in another location in Montpelier. The revenue will become part of the budget and we'll continue to offer the same programs and services. That's extremely important that we not spread misinformation.
Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I see that the print has arrived. Is there anything else you want to add?
Let's see.
Did you and Mike agree to disagree, or do you agree?
He was driving in his car and he ran out of connectivity while we were talking.
Okay.
So we did not agree to disagree. He totally understood why educating the tangential stakeholders is important, why not just quote unquote offering education, but actually requiring them to be in the seat is important. We just did not come to a conclusion because he ran out of.
What I think we're gonna do, thank you so much. What we're
Yep.
gonna do is move on and then come back to this.
Yeah.
If that's all
Okay.
right?
Right, and I would just, I also think we had reaffirming, email from Chad. to-
Right, yes,
from
Chad
the
is,
activity.
yeah.
But I do hope you all read the list of current members of
Yes,
the
we did.
Access
We did.
Committee. Because it is a House appointee, it is a Senate appointee, it is architects, it is people with lived experience, it is VCIL. I don't personally think it's wise to go around a permanent subcommittee of division and fire safety at this point.
I would say that it would be really important to have them be part of the ongoing conversation, but that it is important to do it at this specific bill at this juncture because we are hoping to have an explosion of housing and to not have to make sure that it gets done in a finite period so that it can be applied immediately. My thought was to have just 3 or 4 meetings and then have it go into effect. So
Which I would appreciate if you do have a chance to reconnect with Mike to finish that
Yeah.
conversation.
Yep.
Okay,
we'll do.
thank you.
I don't know how long we have Susan Aronoff, but did you hear her testimony on the Universal Design Study Group?
No. Well, that's not, she heard testimony from her, but not on that issue.
Okay. We did.
Yeah, thank you.
So we have here,
Appreciate it.
I think we have here what looks like the bill itself, right? With changes highlighted in yellow, but.
Looks like it. Sounds good.
Oh, all right. John, you want to move back up to the front of the hot seat?
You don't want that.
Especially, but
Get out of the way. This is the housing appeal.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to consolidate. That's all
Yeah.
I feel stuff.
And it, even though it has yesterday's date, I think it's today's, this is the date, the 10:59, I think is John's.
Let's be very
Alright.
kind to John.
No, I'm just wanting to. Yikes.
Just to let you know, it's room 35 here in.
thank you.
John, welcome back.
John Gray, Office of Legislative Counsel. Did you guys want me to pull something up or just,
Yeah.
Earlier
why don't
we-
you pull up our proposal? And then we have Cam's language to look at on the housing. And.
It's the infrastructure.
Okay, good. We've got 10 copies of it.
okay. So. Let's see what we can do. Morning again, and. I'm
It's
free.
not morning.
Is it not
It's
morning?
that hosting.
Oh, so sorry, yeah.
Okay. I did not know that. But that's good,
Yeah.
I think.
Right.
Time hasn't stopped. So what you're seeing here is the Senate Comparie's latest proposal. And don't have a side-by-side prepared, but what I do have is this document with highlighting that shows changes against the House proposal that you looked at this morning. And I'm happy to walk through all the changes here. The first thing that we're going to see on page 1 is a change to the durational requirement for the affordability provisions. So in the House proposal this morning, you saw that the affordability provisions, that's both for affordable housing development and moderate income housing development, that was in perpetuity. Here you see that is until all indebtedness for that housing infrastructure project has been retired.
Do you all want to pause and Okay.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand.
Cool. This may go very well for me.
Page 3.
Yes, on page 3, you're going to see the same change. We have to pick it up in 2 places, right? Because you have both affordable housing developments and moderate income housing developments. So same durational requirement till all indefinite retired.
If I may, John pointed out to us when we were drafting that nothing stops it from continuing to be affordable.
After that,
You understand.
expire. Right.
Next piece is we come to the housing infrastructure agreement. So that's section 1909. I'll give you a page number in a second. Page 7.
Yeah.
So the point of contention here has been this subdivision 4 that you see on line 14. And this in the House proposal related to, bona fide domicile. On the Senate proposal that we saw yesterday, it was ensuring that no housing unit would be offered as a short-term rental for the same duration, that duration of the indebtedness. What you see here is moving toward the primary residency requirement, but it has different durational requirements. So if the housing unit is sold for owner occupancy, it needs to be initially offered exclusively as a primary residence. So that first sale would be for the purposes of a primary residence. If, however, it's sold as rental housing, that's to be offered exclusively as primary residence until all indebtedness has been retired for that project, and that can be satisfied by biennially providing a landlord certificate or homestead declaration as appropriate. So distinguishing between owner occupancy and that rental housing. In the owner occupancy case, the durational requirement is initial offer. And then for the rental housing piece, it is for the duration of the indebtedness until that indebtedness is retired. But the thing to note, of course, conceptually, is that this is broader than the former Senate proposal related to short-term rentals. This is about primary residency, right?
Right.
So that is the update to subdivision
Any
4.
questions there? Everybody get it? Okay.
It's also the only way we have to enforce something like this at this point.
Okay.
Next, we go to the but-for test. And what you see here is a carve out for affordable projects. So those folks that are seeking the affordability criterion, they wouldn't have to go through the but-for test. It would otherwise exist for your standard flow projects, BEPC, to review each application other than those satisfying the affordability criterion to determine whether they serve the site.
Could you go back to that? Could you explain what the proposal is here?
Well, I think that we felt that if the project was fulfilling the affordability and moderate criteria under this for these projects, that they would not have to be subjected to the but-for test.
That is the but-for test. And states
is
we
the
looked at, like Minnesota, which we
Right.
sent you. So we did look into other states that have a but-for test, and we often on Ways and Means looked at Minnesota for their sake of
Right.
clarity, and the offering affordable housing is the good. That's the public good that is satisfied with our investment.
It's kind of sweetening the pot, move
Yeah.
those
Yes.
those
Well, that's what we're
projects
trying to do
towards
is
affordability.
incent a public good, which is incent more affordable permanent housing.
Okay,
Understand your proposal.
all right.
Next is on the following page, page 9, project criteria. Accepting the 2-pronged structure, that floor area threshold with the alternative of the BEPC board determining that it meaningfully addresses the purpose of the subchapter, but proposing a slightly lower floor area threshold of 51%, so majority dedication to housing. The next piece is probably the following. Yes, very bottom of the next page, page 10. In the latest House proposal that we looked at, we saw that 60 days plus a 30-day in extenuating circumstances. This is just a flat 90-day, so it's same total possible period, but no requirement to make a determination that it's only in extenuating circumstances. So just flat 90 days from that site visit.
So
The you'll see some conforming changes here in just what requirements have to be met for BEPC approval. So picking up that the but-for test is not a requirement for those affordable projects, right? But the real substantive difference you're seeing here, difference of opinion, is on line 9. the proposed CHIP final application date is the end of 2035. And there's a section later I'll come to where I need to update a date to reflect this. There's something that you don't see here is the removal of the limit, right? There used to be a subsection H, your $40 million limit. No limit included in the Senate proposal. The next pieces we can jump to are the increment retention percentages, which are all the way down on page 15. And what you're seeing is the House proposal had been 65 for your standard, the latest House proposal had been 65% for your non-affordable track, and then 80% for your affordable track. The Senate proposal is to maintain that 15% gap, but trying to maintain the same incentive to bump up to affordable projects, but doing 75% for your standard projects and 90% for your affordable.
It went up.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Next change is relatively minor, and I'm going to pick up the thing that I missed. It's in the information reporting section. Yes, on page 20, you don't see a highlight because I missed this, but Dr. Hartleben helpfully pointed this out to me. For the Senate proposal, this would be on or before January 15th, 2035. So I just need to update.
Sorry, which page?
I'm on page 20. This is just the final evaluative report that assesses how well the program went. I forgot to pick up this final date change in moving the sunset for CHIP to that end of 2035. So
Right, and C, line 4.
Yeah, so you're proposing that's 2035
exactly, that's my mistake.
It's just a mistake, the other layer.
with the expiration of the,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
We're talking about stability. We thought it better be consistent.
So that's the report, not the expiration. So you're saying there'd be no 5-year report.
This doesn't include a 5-year check-in. I don't know that, I don't think it was an active item.
We will get annual check-ins from Pepsi. This is sort of how we feel. I think that and particularly with the additional information you've asked for in terms of what's working, what's not working, we felt annual reports were sufficient.
Okay.
Yes.
I see you giving them 2 more weeks.
Yep, rulemaking guidance moved from that issue guidance by November 1 to November 15th of this year. Other changes,
Any reason why?
Have a heart? I don't know. I mean,
Sort of
when,
consistency.
You could just explain why.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure why we changed the date, but I think we felt it gave us a little bit more time.
I think we want them to get the rules right. We heard about how often they meet. And if those become public on January 1st, this should give us sufficient time. While people are usually finishing things up before the holiday season, a lot of what we do is November 15th for that reason.
It's a more standard time that we use for asking for reports.
And it's not rules, it's guidance. Right?
I know.
Okay.
But also, as we all know, if we want things drafted in the second year, we need things early enough for lunch council to actually draft them. Our deadline is, I believe, December 1st.
It wasn't a test.
Our deadline's much earlier.
What
Yeah,
would
send
you?
that to.
Oh, it is?
I just want to point out that none of us discussed this morning the membership of BEPC on page 25. So it sounds like you were in agreement.
Yeah, we still agree with this. Yeah.
I think you
Okay.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, we agree.
With the 3 non-voting.
Oh, great. Okay.
We think it's their opinion.
The last changes here are going to be on the final page 26. It's section 27. So what you don't see is the removal of the houses, section 27, which was the TIP district sunset. So that's removed in this proposal. And in its place, although not conceptually in its place, but just literally in the same place in the bill, you'll note that earlier, and I should have flagged this as we were going through, in section 1908, we talk about the size of the housing development site.
Right.
You guys didn't want to include, the House did not want to include immediate contiguous parcels. The Senate accepted that, but was asking BEPC at the end of this year to come back, just considerations for amending that definition of housing development site, including a recommendation on whether appropriate to include immediately contiguous parcels. That is the extent of what I have to share, and if I can leave the room, I would love to do that, but let me know if you need me to stay.
Well, I think you have done a great job and we're very grateful.
We should break.
Yeah, I can.
Your time,
Oh, yeah. What's your time like for the rest of the day? Or do you know?
I mean, the three of us need to sit down and.
Yep, so if you guys want to email me or text, I'm assuming this is going to keep going for some time, so.
So they want to, I think.
Oh, okay.
No, what I think we want to do is recess. I want to move this along.
Mhm.
So I want to recess now
I can-
and go back upstairs or whatever.
Oh,
Can
yeah.
you reserve us?
It's the room on the messenger.
And then,
And then you have a doctor's appointment.
yeah, well, I have to
Can you be
leave
back
at
by
20.
1:30?
No, he's seeing me at 1:20. So theoretically, 30, I'd be back by
We can all
2.
show up with
I'll be
you.
back by 2. We'll have an hour. But no, that's not true. On our side,
Back of chair.
I don't have to be there,
Yeah.
okay? You'll be chair. Okay. So I think that what we want to do is reconvene after we've
Talked.
talked. So let us talk. So how long do we? I'm good
People
for,
need to eat.
That's where I was
Right?
at.
We didn't get supper last night, so,
Yeah.
and, I'm sure John's hungry as well.
okay,
So
so,
why don't
Normally,
we
but-
do,
Let's shoot for 2
okay,
and,
shall we? Okay, so you're out of there at 3. 3:30.
I'm willing to, depending on how I can delegate my
I don't want
family.
to get you in trouble.
Leaving later than 4 will get me in trouble.
Yeah, okay.
How much trouble?
Okay, we are in recess. Okay, let's go.